Hello, everybody. This is Barry Johnson. Welcome back to another edition of Studio Talk. If my voice sounds a little off today, it's because I'm on the tail end of nursing a really bad cold. Kind of kicked my butt so bad that I even I chose to go get a COVID test just to make sure I didn't have it, even though I'm vaccinated. And good news is I came back negative. But it really kind of put me down for like 3 days. And so I'm trying to catch up right now by making a video. And I'll be honest with you, it may be a little bit hard getting through this. I may have to stop and grab my cup of water over there. As most of you know, if you've watched any of my videos before, I kind of fly off, I wing this, and I leave my mistakes and things in there. But if it gets too bad, you may see me doing some transitions coming in and out. I just took a big spoonful of honey, and hopefully that's going to help. But who knows? So anyway, as the title suggests, we're here to talk about presets today. And just about every plugin that you purchase out there comes with an array of presets. Some of them extensive, some of them a handful, some of them done by popular mix engineers out there, well-known mix engineers who have custom done presets that they typically use on sound sources for a particular genre of music. Some are really well laid out in a way that, it breaks it down between pop vocal, rock vocal, country vocal, those kinds of things, although you don't see many for country out there, but you follow what I'm saying. So the title, I'm going to be honest with you and get to that right out of the gate, is I guess to some degree they kind of call clickbait to some degree. I don't really intentionally mean to do that, but I think this is an important topic, so much so that I need to draw in as many people as I can just so you understand the value of what I'm about ready to talk about. And so I'm not here to give you a whole bunch of great presets. Stop before you go leaving and saying, I came here to find out the best presets I can use for my plugins. Hear me out for a second. I've got some rationale and some reasoning for why I'm going to say what I'm saying. Most of the presets that are created are based upon the fact that you and I are starting with incredibly well-recorded material. Okay, and that means each individual track that comes up, whether it's drums, bass, vocals, guitar, keyboards, virtual instruments, all of these things, that they're properly recorded at the same time. Now, you don't have as much control over virtual instruments as they're coming in, but they still require processing, and a lot of people don't actually realize that and wonder why things get muddy on them. But I've done another video out there that talks about Al Smith's recording techniques that will really kind of lay the foundation to this particular video. So if you haven't seen that, I strongly encourage you to go out there and watch that. So keep in mind, these guys are starting with pristine recorded tracks. And so a preset that may work well created by that mix engineer for that particular track, for that particular genre, and you got to really keep that in mind, that particular genre, may actually work well in that situation. However, most of us doing stuff at home in our project studios, because all of us are at varying degrees, and we should all be on a quest to be able to increase our knowledge and our skill set. Every day we should be trying to get better and better and better at all of this. That's one of the things I preach a lot. And so, I've been at this a long time, so I've already made a gazillion mistakes, bad judgment calls, things like that over the many decades I've been doing this. And so the purpose of this particular discussion is not only talk about things that we all find passionate, but for me to share some of those things that I've learned along the way. It doesn't mean I know everything. I'm the last person to say that. But at least these are things that you should at least consider, and then you sort them out on your own for your own project studio. So, let's stay focused primarily on EQs and compressors for the most, because those are the ones that we use the most. Some other presets out there have a ton of options for the various parameters you can change. Think of some intense reverb, some intense delays, some really wide open options that you can utilize to be able to achieve a particular sound. And so those can be overwhelming at times. So let's kind of set those aside for just a second, and let's talk about EQs and compressors. So again, these guys are working off of incredible source material. So that's kind of the first point. The second point is the majority of these EQs and compressors are modeled off actual hardware, whether it's SSL, whether it's Neve, whether it's API, whether it's Universal Audio, LA2A, 1176, all the various different compressors, CLB1. I could go on and on and on. Manley, all these things, they're modeled after specific pieces of hardware. Now, let me ask you this question. Do you think when you buy that hardware that it comes with preset samples. It gives you examples on how to get settings for certain things. No, it doesn't. If you're working with that hardware, you've got to learn the characteristics of that hardware. And it's only by diving in deep and really learning every aspect of that hardware can you possibly utilize it to achieve whatever goal you're trying to achieve. The problem with presets is it makes us all lazy. It just makes it easy. And if we don't know any better, if you don't know any better, I don't know any better, we think that that's probably the best we're going to get from that if we don't really, really stop and think about it. Now, for some of you, you've embraced this way of working for a long time, right from the beginning. Some of you learned partway through that this is important. Some of you have been doing this for a long time, and you're still actually going to look for a preset for a particular sound you're trying to get. I would say no. And I would even say, don't even save your own presets, at least for a while. At some point that can become viable for you, an easier option. But again, I think that kind of thing just makes things lazy. I think every individual track needs to be EQ'd to sit in the track. Many people make the mistake of pulling up a particular instrument and soloing it and EQing it and compressing it in that manner. Now, in some surgical stuff to try to correct some problems, that may be necessary, but ultimately you should be listening to how it sits amongst all the other tracks if you can, or you should be trying to do that and then doing it that way. But that's a different discussion for another day. Today, let's stay focused on presets. So again, the hardware oftentimes, and even if it's something created from scratch that is new technology that's not based upon hardware, it's still based upon a philosophical inner mechanics or electronics within those types of units, be it compressors or EQs and the like. And so it is in your best interest if you learn how each one of those particular plugins work and you approach it as if you're sitting in front of the hardware. When you're working on a Neve console, you're not pulling up presets on that Neve console. You're learning the EQ curves and the characteristics of each one of them one by one. You're learning how that sounds and how it works and how it relates to how you would apply that to a particular track to make it work and fit and set properly in your mix. And so, the danger of not doing this type of things is become very lazy in our approach and almost get into autopilot when it comes to EQ and compression, which is it's not dangerous. It's just not effective at the end of the day. So you should really start thinking about that and approach your plugins as if it's a piece of hardware, which means you've got to sit down and take time and listen to it and learn. That is the danger. I have a video out there on how many EQs or basically how many channel strips and the like do you really need. And the danger of having so many options is many of you never actually take the time to learn any of them. You just think, hey, I want to use API because they say API is good for drums. Hey, I want to use Neve because they say Neve is great for guitars and vocals and things like that. I'm sorry, but that's not, even though those things are true to some degree, there are no rules. You can decide on what fits for the song you're doing and the style of music you're doing. I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. Yeah, it's a big cup, but that's how I roll. So I want you to think about that. There's a saying out there that says practice makes perfect. And a lot of people adopt that philosophy. I'm here to break it to you, but that is the worst advice ever on the planet. Do you know what potentially makes perfect? Probably anything, but getting close to perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. We can keep repeating the same bad habits over and over and over, and it doesn't mean we're getting better at anything. It's when you learn the right habits, learn the proper way to do things, and then practice that, then you have the chances of perfecting something. And so if you want to learn how to EQ, then learn how to use the EQ you're using. Really learn the interworkings of it. You may find that if you actually approach this, you'll probably find that you don't need anywhere near the plugins that you think you do. It would be much better to invest that money elsewhere. Okay? So really think about these things. Each one of these, whether it's and it varies between the manufacturer. A Waves SSL is not going to sound like a BrainWorks SSL. A BrainWorks SSL is not going to sound like SSL's version of their console. Their native plugin. Mainly because a lot of them model different particular versions of the SSL console, but some of them do a better job. The Waves one is so old it's ridiculous, and I've got and I talk about that in my overview of the UC1 by SSL, the controller for their native channel strip, which happens to sound fantastic, by the way. But then now, based upon all the comments, it's really got me wondering about BrainWorks' version of that. And so I'm kind of curious about that. Ordinarily, I wouldn't go out there and scroll through a lot of these things, but because what I'm trying to do on this channel, it's probably better that I get as diversified as possible in some of these things. I've got a gazillion plugins on my iLok, and I mean a ton of them. So I am just as guilty of going down that rabbit hole of thinking these things are going to make things better. It's going to make my mixes sound better, and some of them do, and some of them, I've got some I've never even used. I've never used. So that's kind of ridiculous. So that's really, again, I've already made these mistakes, so I'm trying to help some of you avoid some of these mistakes. And so it's not that you shouldn't buy different plugins to get different flavors for things. I'm not suggesting that at all. But what I am suggesting, before you move on from one to the next, that you make sure that you really know that plugin and you approach it as if it's a piece of hardware in your studio. Because in your studio, you're working off a hardware compressor, hardware EQ. I can assure you, you're not getting into preset mode. Now, there are certain things when you're going to EQ a kick drum, what you're most likely going to do to it between high pass at a certain frequency, and do a cut at another frequency so that it sits better in the mix and it's not muddy and things like that. There are things you're going to start with, but if you've done this a long time, that's not going to work for every single song you're working on. And so you've got to learn how to use those plugins, again, as if they're hardware. And so this is super important. So why is this really important to you? So you don't waste your freaking money. You're not out there going and buying things that aren't going to do you any good. If you can't get the potential out of the tool that you're using, why in the world would you want to go to something else? Because if you didn't take the time to learn the first tool you're using, what are the odds are you're actually going to take the time to learn the second? And the more you keep compounding upon that over and over and over, it's just going to get worse, worse, and worse. Okay? There are some areas where presets are a good starting point just to kind of get a feel for what it can do. Let's get off EQs and compressors for a second. Let's get into some reverbs and some delays. There are some presets in there that can give you ideas. But then again, too, let's take Echo Boy by Soundtoys. I think anybody would have a hard time arguing that that's not the best delay for DAW that's ever been created. In my opinion, it is. It's not even close. There are other great ones out there for specific certain things, like Bucket Brigade or something like that. There are some that do a great job of that. But again, you can do so much with Echo Boy. It is such a powerful tool to be able to use creatively that messing around with presets in there should give you an idea of the sonic capabilities of it, because you would do that back in the day if you bought a 19-inch rack mount delay or a reverb. You go through the presets. Those can be more generalized and not necessarily track specific in many times, and those can be applicable. So everything I'm saying doesn't apply to everything, but especially if you're working in EQs and compressors, because how do you think you're going to really learn what EQ curves do? How are you going to learn what frequencies to use and not use on certain source materials? How are you going to learn to be able to get all of your tracks blend well, where you have clarity across your mix between all of your tracks? You're not dealing with mud and all that garbage that happens when you're not paying attention to things and you don't understand these things. An EQ curve is an EQ curve. Now, the difference between some of these things are some of the, capacitors and resistors and transformers. Transformers have a huge impact on the tonal characteristics of a piece of hardware. And so that's where it adds color, what we call color to things. And so that's why, even though technically on paper, an EQ curve may look the same, if you're looking at on an EQ curve on a chart as an example, but it may sound different from one to the next. And so that's fine. That's what's great about a lot of these things. And that's what they can do for you to help you understand. But if you don't actually take the time to learn how those things work, you should have a fundamental understanding of how EQ works. You should have a fundamental understanding of how compression works. You should have a fundamental understanding of the different types of compression, FET, VCA, so many others out there that you should be understanding what the advantages are between one versus the other and why they're advantageous on certain sources versus others. They're not bad on anything, but it's just some are more advantageous on others. They work differently. And I'll be doing some videos in the future really breaking down compression and really breaking down what the various types of technology and compressors can do for you and how to understand and appreciate them. But that's a little bit later on. So anyway, this is not going to be one of my super long videos because I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think I've laid the foundational principle to get you to at least consider these things. I encourage you to really, really, really think about these things. This stuff's really important. I can't begin to tell you how important it is. If you truly are on a desire to be able to record and mix the very best you possibly can, you are not going to be able to do that unless you take this advice. You're not going to be able to reach your potential. Can you put out a decent mix going I'm going to flat out say it the lazy way? Yeah, you can. You can. But they're not going to be great and they're not going to be you. They're not going to be you. And some of us do this because, we enjoy the passion of recording. We actually enjoy the art of this thing that we do in recording and mixing because it is its own art form. But then a lot of us are songwriters too, where our goal is just to be able to capture the songs that we're doing and get those down. Well, either way, whether you're mixing for the art of learning how to mix and engineer, mix, and even produce music to some degree, if you're looking to master that, then everything I said is absolutely critical. If your main priority is just to be able to write your music and be able to put it out there, well, you need the first one. First of all, you got to start with a great song. So if you've got the talent to be able to do that, and you can do that, and as many of us enjoy doing that, you really need to get the first one down too, because you want your music and your song to be represented as best it can be. And so, you've got the tools and you can do this. You don't have to have a ton invested. You can start using these things and start learning these things with just stock EQs and compressors with your DAW, And so as you keep moving on and you add to that, I would caution add slowly. One of the advantages now, I'm going to do a video on the whole pros and cons of subscription as it relates to plugins, because there are pros and cons to those, and I'm going to be doing a video soon. But one of the disadvantages I'll get out for the sake of this video is you pay a subscription and you get all of their plugins, whether it's McDSP, whether it's Brainworks, whether it's SSL, whether it's Waves doesn't have a subscription, but anyway, all the various ones that have subscriptions out there, you get a Slate as another popular one. You get all of their plugins. Well, that comes at a danger, okay? Because you've got so many choices, and so many choices can cause you to waste your time, slow down your creativity, slow down your productivity, because you're just trying to explore by just applying different plugins and different EQs and different compressors to things without even understanding why you should be doing that. So keep these things in mind. Really approach that. Start one at a time. Do not move on until you feel like you've got it down. Okay, you've got it down. I got to take another drink of water. I'm sorry. Until you've got it down, okay? I can't stress this enough, man. It's some of the things I want to just you got to do this, It's really, really important. So I want you guys to be you guys and girls. I use guys interchangeably, so please, nobody take offense to that. It's really important. This is important. I want you to be as great as you have the potential to be. And all of us, have the potential to be great at this. And so we have amazing tools to work with today. I'm always deeply humbled by how easy it is today. And those of you that are growing up in this generation, trust me, it was not always this easy and it was not always this inexpensive. As expensive as it seems like it is to get going and recording at home. Got to take another drink of water. Honestly, it's not even a fraction of what it was when I started, okay? So anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse with this thing. Hate to use that analogy, but I don't want to overstay my welcome. So if you like the topics we talk about on this channel, I encourage you to go back and watch some of my other videos out there. I hope you'll find them entertaining. I've been really deeply humbled by the reception so far. I'm still at the infancy of doing this, and I'm still learning how to do this from a content perspective. And so I hope what I'm doing is giving value to you in some way. At the very least, if it gives you either, you can say, yeah, I can relate to what he's saying. I've learned that lesson. What he's saying is spot on. You could say, yeah, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't want to waste my time with it. Well, I can understand that. Well, I don't necessarily understand it, but I can appreciate the fact that what I say is not for everybody. But if I can help you along in your journey and help you to at least kind of think about some of these things and really, really put some thought into it, because if you're watching this, the only reason you would be watching this is because you want to achieve better mixes. You want to achieve better recordings. And I'm just one voice out there that's just like you. I'm not some big guy. Yes, that probably looks cool back there and everything, and it is. I'm blessed to walk in here, but everything I have in this room was amassed over, a couple of decades or so. So I didn't buy all this overnight. So anyway, kind of keep that in mind. So again, if you like the channel, please do me a favor. Like, subscribe. I think that's going to pop up down below. Hit that notification bell. These things are important. I'm going to keep doing these things whether you like or subscribe or not because I enjoy doing this. And, I've got the luxury. All I have to go in here is turn on my recorder, turn on my camera, turn on my lights, and start talking. So, that's pretty easy for me. So anyway, thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate all of the support, all of the comments. It's been great so far, and I try and I've done a very good job so far. I think of responding to every single comment that's been left on all of my videos, and I'm going to keep doing that as best I can because I love the conversation. And that's what this channel is really about, having conversations about these things. Talking about gear, talking about students, talking about the challenges, all the things that we go through, sometimes the emotional roller coaster, sometimes the investment, the cost, these things, what makes sense, what doesn't. These are all topics that I'll talk about, as we move forward with this show. So a show, I call it a show, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what you call this stuff. But anyway, thank you very much, and I hope all of you have a great day.